Man, it was a tough day for me Monday night. The Bears and Commanders game. This is what I was doing most of the night that night after that game.
But
Up Chuck. Up Chuck.
Look, man, look, it's just one game. I deal with tons of crazy Chicago Bears fans. You got to give Chicago their credit. I thought Caleb Williams played really smart. Didn't turn the ball over. That was one of the reasons why Chicago won. They took care of the turnover battle. Washington in the first 5 games, they only committed 5 turnovers. And in that game against the Bears, they committed 3. Albeit it was rainy, but still, I just didn't like the fact that we did have an 8-point lead. And I felt like we should have kept the momentum going. But Champ, like I said, you constantly talk about the offensive line, how they cannot throw behind his back. That defensive line, they got to find a way from Washington to get pressure. And if they can't stop the run, you're asking a world of trouble because if you give Caleb Williams a running attack with DeAndre Swift from, of course, your Georgia Bulldogs, and if the defensive line is not doing its part to get after Caleb Williams, I'm sorry. But look, I was very upset, very disappointed because we should have won that game. But still in all, you just got to give your hat to Chicago. But I'm over that now because I got bigger fish to fry. That's my mentality. We got Dallas this Sunday at Dallas, which is no joke because we all know how good Dallas is at home. They have not lost one game at home this season, even with the Green Bay game that ended up in a tie. And Dak Prescott, had it not been for Baker Mayfield, we would have more discussions about Dak Prescott as the front runner for the league MVP. Because if you look at his numbers, he's been balling. And now they have CD Lamb from my Oklahoma Sooners who's coming back. And yes, just like Washington, my Oklahoma Sooners suffered an embarrassing loss to the Texas Longhorns. Just like this one, that's exactly how I was feeling. But thank God for Mama Champ. She got me through the night. I had a couple of margaritas from Bunny's. That's a good spot in South Orange, New Jersey. Good bar, restaurant, food, whatever the case may be. Shout out to the great staff. But BRF Sports, I'm going to let you go first. What were your results? What were your thoughts about the Bears Commanders game?
Just looking back at highlights and just analyzing the game, Washington just shot themselves in the foot too many times. I mean, you would think a team as prolific and as creative and as dynamic as the Washington Commanders are with their running attack, you're up 24-16. I'm finding all ways possible to kill the clock. I'm not giving Chicago, even with the rain, I'm finding better ways to call plays to not put yourselves in a situation where you have a chance to turn the ball over, even with it being rainy. But I mean, shout out to the Bears, man. I mean, they were able to take advantage. They were able to make plays. They were able to take advantage of Washington's mishaps. And shout out to Ben Johnson. He called a pretty good game. He called a good game. But just some of the creativity he had in his play calling, like the the one particular play where Caleb Williams scored that one touchdown where they almost ran like a college style option kind of in a way with DeAndre Swift as the lead blocker. Creativity in the play calling. That's what you expect from someone with the mind of a Ben Johnson. We've seen that the last few years in Detroit. He's one of the best play callers in the game when everything up and running, and he's really he's established a matchup he wants to exploit. He's very good at exploiting that. And with the Washington Commanders, it is still their run defense. It is still their run defense. The Bears defense as well. They were making plays. Jaquan Brisker got that really nice interception to kind of, in a way, set the tone as far as how the game was going to be played. Like I said, I treat that game as, but Washington just shot themselves in the foot way too many times, and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt had a decent game, got over 60 yards. I feel like they could have. That fumble killed. Yeah, that fumble was like You don't necessarily want to say the death nail, but I mean, what else is there to say? I mean, it pretty much turned the tide completely in the Chicago Bears' favor from that point on, and the momentum was clearly on their side, and they were able to take it. They were able to take it and win that game. But yeah, shout out to Ben Johnson. Shout out to Caleb Williams playing smart football, not putting them, not taking unnecessary risks, not turning the ball over. Just I think Chicago from in that weather played about as good and clean a game as you could have played in that type of scenario, in that type of weather, particularly being on the road in Washington. Well, Washington, I feel like Washington has one of the more underrated, as far, I feel like they have one of the more underrated home field advantages in the league. I don't think that's crazy to say. They have a pretty good fans base, and when they get up in there and when they get in that stadium, they can get loud and they can cause ruckus and they can cause things to swing in the Commanders' favor. They have a very underrated fan base. I hope I look at Washington, and if they're going to really truly contend for the NFC East, because I mean, let's face it, Philly's not exactly running away with the division. Dallas is playing really good football, but that's just on the offensive side of the ball because their defense is still horrible. Defense is horrible. And the Giants, I've been on the Giants, in particularly their front seven. I think they have a top five in terms of talent wise. I think they have a top five pass rush in football when you take into account Thibodeau and Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence, and they throw Abdul Carter in the mix. They have a ferocious pass rush who can get after anybody. And now, if their offense is going to start to pick up, even without Malik Neighbors, when you have Jackson Dart playing good football as a rookie, you have Cam Scatterboo playing really good football as a rookie, and then you have a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson who's like I mentioned before, he's stepping up in the place of Malik Neighbors.
Don't forget Tracy. Tracy may come back.
Yeah, Tyrone Tracy, who was slated to be the number one running back this year before he got hurt. You get him back, that just adds more depth to your offense. So don't look now. This NFC East might actually be a little wide open. I do still think when all is said and done and when the smoke clears, I still think it's the Philadelphia Eagles division to take, because I do still think they are the most talented team in that division. And I do think right now they're coasting, but I do think they're going to find the gear. And I think when they find the gear, I don't think there's another team in the division that can touch them. But with that being said, if you're going to touch the Eagles, now's the best time to touch them because they're not playing good football. But that game between the Bears and Commanders was a really good game. It was a fun game, even with the weather aside. Washington really, to me, should have won. I think they should have personally won that game. They just shot him in the foot too many times, and you cannot give an offensive coordinator like Ben Johnson extra chances, because eventually he will find something to exploit. He's going to take advantage of it. And that's what ultimately led to them coming back and winning that game on that field goal by Jake Moody. And shout out to Jake Moody. I mean, San Francisco just kicks you to the curb. And then you find a spot in Chicago, you playing good, and you kicking the ball well, you playing good football. So shout out to Jake Moody for hitting that game-winning kick. But yeah, that was a game Washington really had in the palm of their hands, and they let it slip. But I do think they can bounce back. But I tell you what, Washington, Dallas this Sunday, from what I've seen from the odds makers and all that, they have the highest over/under on the entire Sunday slate. So do not be surprised if both teams put up 30 in this game, because I don't think neither defense is going to show up. Don't be surprised if both teams get 30. So I'm expecting an OK Corral type shootout between those two teams. But Washington should have won. Washington should have won that game Monday night. They shot themselves in the foot too many times. And shout out to Chicago for taking advantage.
Well, Washington is considered a 1.5-point favorite in that game against Dallas Cowboys. I don't understand why, given how excellent Dallas has been at home. And plus, Dallas is also coming off a disappointing loss against the Carolina Panthers, who the two of y'all should know, because after all, Carolina gave Atlanta, it was 30-0. Yeah. But listen, when Chicago runs the ball, when DeAndre Swift 14 carries for 108 yards, And when you're not asking Caleb Williams to throw the football that much, he only threw it 29 times, only completed 17 of his passes. But when you're playing situational football, management football, you're gonna win a lot of games when you do you're gonna win a lot of games just like that. And when you don't commit turnovers, you're gonna win. That's what's disappointing. I mean, that late turnover by Jaden Daniels, I wasn't anticipating that. And at some point in time, if I'm the offensive coordinator, or if I'm Dan Quinn, if I'm Cliff Kingsbury, you got to take some snaps with Jaden Daniels under the center at some point, because it can't just all be from plays just from the shotgun. When you know if it's a game with rain and stuff like that. No, I'm not asking Jaden Daniels to take a tush push like Jalen Hurts, because obviously, even though Jaden Daniels is 6'4", he is a lanky dude. Jalen Hurts is a legit 6'1", 223 with that offensive line. So it's easy for them to do the tush push. But at some point in time, I need to see Jaden Daniels take more snaps from under the center. Now, he's in a good situation, as well as Cliff Kingsbury, because Jaden Daniels is coachable. Champ has been on the record saying that Jaden Daniels obviously is more coachable than Kyler Murray. And so far, it's been proven. But I need to see more from Jaden Daniels under the center to take his game to the next level, because dare I say, is he suffering from a sophomore slump? Because he's missed a couple of games this season due to injury. And on top of that, we're seeing other guys on the offensive side step up. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, known as Bill, Debo, he's having a really solid season so far. And Terry McLaurin has also had injuries himself too. And they still have Zach Ertz. They also have Jeremy McNichols, who I really like a lot. But I just need to see more. I need to see more creativity from Cliff Kingsbury. But in that situation, it was just inexcusable. And I felt like, look, it's still early in the season. It's only 3-3. Like you said, DRF, it's wide open in the NFC East. Don't be surprised if the Giants actually win the division. And imagine how the Giants would be I'm sorry. I got to say it, Chip. Imagine how the Giants would be if they have Malik Neighbors, had it not been for injury. Imagine how explosive that offense would be with Dart, with Scatterboo, with Neighbors, with Robinson. That is a dangerous duo. We talk about the Eagles duo and the Commanders duo and the Cowboys duo. Don't sleep or underestimate the Giants duo. But I think for the Commanders, I hope this was somewhat of a wake-up call for them. They need to make some adjustments. They got to find a way to stop the running game. They're 21st in the NFL as far as rushing defense. I mean, it's a slight improvement so far, because last year they were 30th in the NFL in rushing defense. But when you go up against a team, and the scary part is Saquon still hasn't had a great game so far this season. Imagine what Saquon's going to do against the Commanders. Or Scatterboo when he faces them at MetLife. So, big fella, what are your thoughts?
When you put yourself in a position to lose, you may lose, unfortunately. That's what happened to the Washington Commanders, unfortunately. Look, you had the game won. You had it in hand. And the rain, yes, that's going to play a factor at the end. But when chaos and things beyond your control start to strike, that's when you have to be more careful than ever. And unfortunately, the Washington Commanders were not able to be as careful as they needed to be. As far as him always in the shotgun, I think that's Cliff Kingsbury protection for him. The offensive line is still coming along, I will say, and they trying to give him a little bit more time back there before, somebody can just rush him versus him being under the sun and having to take those 3 to 4 steps drops. Plus, when Terry McLaurin gets back, he'll have his speedster back in order to stretch the field. And as fast as Terry McLaurin is, then guess what? He'll be able to get down that field in the time that he need him to be. So I really think that he's just trying to protect Jaden Daniels with him being in the shotgun all the time. But to your point, PS, you can't do that all the time. you can't make the shotgun your base offense. That's not
Too predictable.
Yeah, it's way too predictable. And you can't run because you can't. It's not easy to get a running play off every single play. You can't run RPOs and options and stuff like that every single play. But eventually, the team's going to get or halfback draw. So eventually, you're going to get caught up. But turnovers. Shouldn't have let them hang around that long, and should have been able to hold on to the ball just a little bit longer. And that was basically it. It's not this big old. It's just simple turnovers. You gotta be careful with that ball. That's how come when you play football, you train for every single scenario. That's how come they wet the ball, during time so you can throw it, so you can practice holding on to it. That's why they do that. So just in case it starts raining, starts snowing, or starts sleeting, you're able to hold on to it, and you're already prepared for that moment. But unfortunately, the moment was too big for them, and they wasn't able to hold on to it. But they have NFC East right now is one of the more competitive divisions at this point. They're very, very competitive. You have some of the high-powered offenses in the league. These guys can put up points. The Giants are slowly but surely coming into their own with Jackson Dart and Cam Scattergood. To your point, PSP. You have Dallas. Although they can't stop a nosebleed at this point with a bale of cotton, they're not going to. It's just, they can score with the best of them. They can put up some points. It's with CeeDee Lamb coming back. It's interesting because the thing is, with CeeDee Lamb coming back, you're asking yourself this: is he going to add more to the firepower, or is he going to disrupt the chemistry between
Dak and George Pickens?
Yes.
And George Pickens, to his credit, has played outstanding.
Yes. So I'm really, really looking at that very, very closely because now you got to feed two guys. And George Pickens has had, his career high was 6 touchdowns. He's already scored that already this year. So you got to ask yourself, is this going to be, the beginning of something special, or is this going to be a disruption? And, is it time, and with the chemistry that Dak has with George Pickens, is it time to go ahead and get him re-signed before it's too late? That's a whole nother ball game. But there's a lot to be said about the NFC East, man. The NFC East is very competitive. There's a lot of high-powered offense in the league that needs to go on. But a lot of times, the thing is, it seems like the entire division is suffering from one thing. That's lackluster defense. Granted, it's not as bad as it was before. It's not as bad. Granted, the Eagles are not as bad, but it's not the Philadelphia Eagles that we're used to. You're used to that stifling defense of Philadelphia. When you think about the Washington Commanders, good but not stifling. When you think about the Dallas Cowboys, you can pretty much take the defense and throw it out of the window. They just show up on the field in order to see if they can slow somebody down.
2018, that was their best time on defense that year. They had a really good defense, and Chip, you would know for a fact because remember there was a Thursday night football game against New Orleans Saints at Dallas. Drew Brees at that point, I believe he was the front runner for the league MVP, and because he struggled in that game, nationally televised game against the Dallas Cowboys with DeMarcus Lawrence and Leighton Vander Esch, who was a rookie at that time. Sooner or later, Patrick Mahomes was now in the driver's seat for the league MVP back in 2018, his first year as a starter.
Yes. So that's what the NFC East has in common. A lot of shaky defenses. You got to ask yourself, is the Eagles declining, or is this just a shakeup at this point? But like I said, it's a lot of lackluster defense as far as the NFC East, with the exception of, I will say, the Giants, because the only thing that they needed was the offense to be able to keep up. But if they start getting on as far as these pass rushers are concerned, they have a potential to do some damage. But as far as offense is concerned, the NFC East is where it's at. So it's going to be interesting to see how it comes down to the nitty-gritty.
I still believe that the Commanders will be fine. Even if they lose against the Dallas Cowboys, I wouldn't be surprised, although they're a 1.5-point favorite. But at the same time, Dallas is just so explosive on offense. Dak Prescott, if you look at it so far this season, 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. But Dorrance Armstrong, a key guy for the Washington Commanders, leads the team in sacks about 5.5. If he can find a way to get after Dak Prescott, because again, the offensive line at times, they've done their part protecting Dak Prescott, but we just got to stop the running game. That's the thing. Now, fortunately for us, for Washington, they don't have that running game like they once had, from DeMarco Murray to Ezekiel Elliott now. I mean, Enrico Dowdle just reminded them just how good he was, because, man, he torched that Dallas Cowboys defense. Once again, I mean, he had another dominant game after the Miami Dolphins game. If you thought that was it, oh wait, I have another thing coming. And I hope for Corey Krosky-Merritt and for Jeremy McNichols, they may have a chance, because with the two of them, go back to what they did against the Chargers. That's the type of performance that they need to have. If they can find a way to get the running game going, Jaden Daniels, again, I'm not asking him to do too much. I just need you to do one thing. Please protect the football. I can't have another game of you committing 3 or 4 turnovers and we expecting to win that game, because the first 5 games for Washington, they only committed 3 turnovers. And again, he is suffering from somewhat of a sophomore slump because, again, that knee injury, that sprained knee injury. And again, I need to see more play calling, more creativity from Cliff Kingsbury as far as taking snaps under the center. But the weather won't play a factor because, again, it is indoor, it is at Jerry World. And, of course, there's going to be some Commanders fans that's going to be in that game, because even though it's at Dallas, don't be surprised. If it was a 49ers Dallas game, don't be surprised for 1 second that 49ers fans are going to be there in that game, man. But I hope for the Commanders will move on. So I just need to move on. Thank God for God, man, because it was a hard time for me that Monday night.